everyone, because we've been sitting for a while, why don't you stand up just while I'm getting you oriented, just move your body around. We're going to do a practice now. And let me just share a couple of things. We're going to dive very deeply, as we've been talking yesterday, last night, and today about the brain, about quantum physics, and now we're going to go into the mind. So one thing we can say about the mind, and we'll define it after we do this practice a little bit, at least a working definition, is that it has something to do with your subjective experience, which we're going to dive into right now, and also something to do with awareness, which we're also going to dive into, and something about regulating something which we'll really explore afterwards. And it has everything to do with what Alyssa just spoke about presence, and what Richie was beautifully telling us about the idea that you have these different ways of being, and you can actually use a way of training the mind. So this practice, and now please take a seat, we're going to begin a practice. Get yourself comfortable. This practice is called the Wheel of Awareness. It's a practice that is written up in the last 3 books I've written, so you don't have to take notes. It's also for free. You can go to my website and download it on whatever digital thing you have, and you can practice it yourself. So you don't need to take notes, but get yourself comfortable. It's a way, in a sense, of integrating awareness, which we'll talk about later on, and so it comes from a fundamental way of thinking deeply about the mind and well-being. And it turns out that a number of mindfulness teachers, John Kabat-Zinn, Jack Kornfield, and others, have experienced this and say that this is a mindfulness practice, but it didn't start out that way. It actually started out as a very scientifically formulated approach to using awareness to actually cultivate something called integration. So we only have this slide we're going to look at. This is the Wheel of Awareness. If you imagine a wheel, and it's actually kind of, you imagine the table being the outside rim of your wheel. Imagine there was a hub right in the center, and in my office, where this comes from, actually, there's a big glass center of the table we have at the Mindsight Institute. And that glass center, you can see right through it, that would be representing awareness. So the hub of this wheel. And let me see if I can get this thing to work. That's here. And then we have around the rim anything you can be aware of. So one way that people describe awareness is the experience of knowing, which is in the hub, and that which is known. And you can differentiate them and link them. So we're not saying they're totally separate, but they can be differentiated, your sense of knowing in the hub and what's known. Now, what can you know? You can know your first 5 senses, which we'll explore. In science, we use the term sixth sense for your sense of the interior of the body. We'll explore that now in this practice. You can make up a term called the seventh sense, which is your sense of mental activities like feelings or thoughts, memories, images, hopes, dreams, attitudes, beliefs, things like that. We'll explore those too. And then there's even something you can call an eighth sense, which is your sense of relatedness to yourself, relatedness to others, relatedness to the planet. We'll talk about that as we go. So to do this practice, let me just get you oriented. How many of you have a reflective practice you do on a regular basis? Please raise your hand. Really high. Okay, so it looks like about half. Okay, so if you've never done a reflective practice before, then let me just get you a little oriented here. We're going to be taking the focus of attention, and this will be a guided practice, so I will be inviting you to focus your attention in a certain kind of way. So even though your body won't be moving, your mind will be moving a lot, and your brain will be getting a workout, we assume, although maybe we'll do an MRI study one day of this and see actually what's happening in the brain. But this is a mental practice. So get yourselves sitting comfortably in the chair, your back straight, feet both planted on the floor. If you have a back problem, you can actually do this lying on the floor. There's plenty of room up here, because this will take a lot of about 15 or 20 minutes. And then with your back straight, this is a sense of purpose. You can have your chest saying, I'm about to do a serious practice here. First, with your eyes open, let your attention come to the middle of the room. And now let your attention go to the wall behind me. And now bring your attention back to the middle of the room. And now let your attention come to about book reading distance. And notice how you can determine where attention goes. And for just this first part of this practice, let your attention find the breathing, the breath, and let's begin at the level of the nostrils, letting the sensation of the air as it comes in through the nostrils fill awareness, and then as it goes out, let that fill awareness. Just ride the wave of the breath in and out. You can close your eyes if you'd like, or leave them open, it doesn't matter. And now bring your attention to the level of your chest, where you may sense the rising and falling of the chest as the air fills the lungs and escapes the lungs. And now let attention move to the level of the belly, and if you want, you could put a hand on your abdomen. And notice that when the air fills the lungs, the abdomen actually moves outward. And when the air escapes the lungs, the abdomen moves inward. Let this movement of the belly outward and inward now be the focus of attention, riding the wave of the movement of your belly in and out. Now, wherever you feel the breath most naturally, the belly moving, the chest rising and falling, the air at the nostrils, or maybe the whole body just breathing, wherever it is for you, let that be where attention goes and awareness becomes filled with that sensation of the breath. And just ride the wave of the breath in and out. Cultures east and west, ancient and modern, use the breath as a common practice of focus. And I'll just share with you an ancient story that's a very helpful one that's been passed down through the generations, and it goes like this, that the mind is like the ocean, and deep beneath the surface of the ocean, it's calm and it's clear. And no matter what those conditions are at the surface, if you're deep beneath the ocean's surface, you can actually look upward and just notice those conditions, whether it's flat or choppy waves or even a full storm. Deep beneath the surface, it's calm and clear. And just sensing your breath brings you beneath the surface of the mind, where from this deep place of calmness and tranquility, you can just observe whatever is happening at the surface of the mind, the feelings or thoughts, memories, beliefs, anything at the surface. You can remain in this deep place and just notice that. Now, this metaphor of the ocean and this deep place of tranquility you can get to by just sensing the breath is very similar to the idea of the hub of the mind in this wheel of awareness. So we're going to begin now this wheel of awareness practice, and if you want to see the wheel again, you can open your eyes if they're closed, and just take a look at the slide. And the hub of this wheel is this open place beneath the ribs in the center. It's this place of openness and clarity. It's this place of awareness. And we're going to go into this practice now, and if you focus on your breath, you can then image the wheel and imagine yourself sensing things from this hub of the mind. Let's begin that now. Just focus on a few cycles of the breath. Whether you can image the wheel or just have the idea of the wheel, it doesn't matter. Let the idea of the wheel fill your mind. And imagine that from this hub of the wheel of awareness, you can actually send a spoke of attention to this first segment of the rim, which represents the outside world. And let's begin with the sense of hearing. And right now, just let sound fill awareness. And now moving the spoke over just a bit, let the sense of sight fill awareness. If you'd like, You can open your eyes a bit and just let a gentle focus bring in light for the sense of seeing. And now moving the spoke over a bit more, this time to the sense of smell, to olfaction, letting any odors fill awareness. And now moving the spoke over a bit more to the sense of taste, letting tastes fill awareness. And now one more time in this segment, moving the spoke to the sense of touch, anywhere where the skin is touching something, your clothing, skin touching skin, let that fill awareness in the hub. And now taking a bit of a deeper breath, imagine now moving the spoke of attention over to the next segment of the rim. In this second segment of the rim, we have the interior of the body. And let's begin with the facial area, letting the muscles and bones of the face fill awareness. And now moving attention to the whole of the scalp, letting the muscles and bones of the scalp, the back of the head, the top of the head fill awareness. And now moving attention to the throat and neck area. And then to the shoulders. And now sending attention down both arms to the elbows, to the wrists, to the ends of the fingers. And now bringing attention to the muscles and bones in the upper back and the chest. And now to the lower back and the abdomen. And now to the hips. And then down both legs to the knees, the ankles, the ends of the toes. And now bringing attention to the pelvic region, to the genitals, and now to the intestines, and then moving attention to the interior of the lungs, and now to the heart region. And now letting attention be filled with the focus on the entire body, letting the interior signals from the body fill awareness. Knowing that the wisdom of the body is available by just inviting its signals into awareness, I invite you to now take a bit of a deeper breath as we let the body go and move the spoke of attention over to the next segment of the rim. And this is the segment of the rim that represents our mental lives, our feelings and thoughts and memories. And in this review of the rim, this part, it'll have two sections to it. The first section simply goes like this: from the hub of the wheel of awareness, with the spoke over to this segment of the rim. Invite any kind of mental activity, a feeling, a thought, a memory, an image, anything at all. Just invite anything to come into awareness. And your task is to simply be present for it and allow it to enter awareness and experience it. And let's begin that part right now. And now for the second part of this segment of the rim, again, I'll invite you to just bring in anything that comes from this part of the rim into awareness. But this time, in addition to that invitation, see if you can observe or study the nature by which a mental activity, let's say a feeling or a thought, how does it first present itself to awareness? Is it sudden? Is it gradual? What does that feel like? The first presentation of a mental activity into the hub of awareness. And then once it's presented itself, how does it stay present? Does it vibrate? Is it full? Does it come in and out? How does that staying present in awareness happen? And then, how does it leave awareness? Again, is it gradual? Is it sudden? Or is it just replaced by another mental activity, another feeling, another thought? And if it's not replaced by another mental activity, what does the gap feel like between two mental activities? So in this part of the rim review, I'm inviting you to become a student of the architecture of mental life, studying how things present themselves, stay present, and leave awareness. And let's begin that process right now. And now I invite you to find your breath. Just ride the wave of the breath in and out. And we're going to let this segment go as we move the spoke over now to the fourth and final segment of the rim. And this is the segment of the rim where we open to awareness our sense of connection. And let's begin right now here, your feeling of connection to people physically close to you in this room. Just bring into awareness the sense of connection to those closest to you. And now let that sense of connection expand to all of us sharing the time in this room here, or if you're watching from somewhere else, people close to you in the room where you are right now, the whole room, all of us together. And now, in fact, let's extend that to all the people who are watching this with us, sharing this experience of this weekend together. Sense of connection to all of us with those intentions. And now bring into the hub of the wheel of awareness your sense of connection to your family and friends that are not in this room, but with whom you feel close and connected. And now let that extend to people who live in your community. to people with whom you work, people who live in your state, to people who live in your country. And then let that sense of connection expand to people who live throughout our common home, this planet. And then invite yourself to be aware of your sense of connection to all living beings who share this home we call Earth. And knowing that science is now demonstrating what wisdom traditions have known for thousands of years, see if you can bring from inside of yourself wishes of love and care, of kindness and compassion. And from inside of you, if you focus on your heart, that can be a place to begin that feeling. See if you can send it out to all living beings who share the planet Earth together. And now bringing that sense of love and compassion, of kindness and concern into your own bodily experience right now, to the self that can be in part defined by your body. Let this sense of kindness and positive regard, of compassion, come into your inner life. And now I invite you to take a deeper breath now. And this would be where, if you were teaching this to kids in schools, which we do, we would stop here. But because this is a more advanced group, we're going to take it one more step. It's a very brief step, but an important one for our exploration. So what I'd like you to do is first find the breath, ride the wave of the breath in and out, and allow yourself to bring yourself back into the hub of the wheel of awareness, letting the breath go, and just feeling that openness inside. And this time, what I'm going to invite you to do is imagine sending a spoke out from the hub, just like we've been doing, only this time, instead of the spoke finding itself on the rim, imagine bending the spoke around so that it comes back into the hub from which it arose. So you're going to be focusing attention directly on awareness itself. And let's invite ourselves now to experience what that feels like, to be aware of awareness. invite you to find the breath again, riding the wave of the in-breath and the wave of the out-breath, in and out. And this brings our wheel of awareness practice to a close, and when you're ready, you can let your eyes come open. Feel free to move your body around a bit. So welcome back. If this were a day-long retreat, which is usually how I teach this, we would have time to take a break. People would be in silence, just living with what's going on. Because I have 2 minutes to speak before I go up with Deepak, I'm just going to show you one more slide. But myself, I want to thank you for doing that practice. And what people who've been doing this practice on a regular basis find is it transforms their sense of presence. So everything Alyssa was saying about presence, in many ways, this gives you an intervention to create presence. And in some of the books, I talk about some of the neural correlates or possible neural correlates of it. But this is a slide that is in the Mindful Therapist book. It's also in the Pocket Guide to Interpersonal Neurobiology. It's inferred in the Mindsight book. And I just want to give you a description of how to blend everything we talked about yesterday and this morning in terms of mind, and consider possible correlations, though this we won't talk about, to the brain. But it goes like this. And this could be a part of our discussion too, Deepak, because we've talked about this before. But if you embrace the possibility that the mind is an emergent, self-organizing process that arises as patterns of energy, sometimes in the form of information, sometimes not, arise from the nervous system and the whole body. So we can look at Richie's unbelievably revolutionary studies on the brain and blend those into what we're doing. But not only does energy and information flow in the body, it also flows between people in relationships. In fact, relationships we have with each other throughout the lifespan. So I'm an attachment researcher, and we study how relationships shape the mind. So whether you're studying energy and information flow in the body or its flow between people, what we can say is that the mind is an emergent, bless you, the mind is an emergent process. This is the proposal. That's arising from that flow, and because it's a complex system, it has a self-organizing capacity to actually turn back and regulate that from which it arose. That's pure complex systems thinking. But if we add all the discussions of the physics of it, here's what I want to suggest to you. That in regulating the flow of energy and information and thinking deeply about all these incredible discussions you've heard about quantum theory, and this doesn't have to do with the brain as a huge structure, it has to do with the mind as an emergent property of energy flow, that the mind is actually regulating the transformation of possibility into actuality. And this is a graph that basically looks at a distribution of probabilities or certainties from 100% certainty, like you're saying, I really want to go to lunch now, I really need to eat, and then you're going to be eating a salad, to down to, let's say, a plateau of increased probability, like I'm in the mood to eat, but I don't know what I'll eat, to a plane of possibility, which is where you drop beneath your mood, drop beneath your thoughts, which are elevated levels of probability, and you go to this open plane, and that presence, and people who have presence, more than that negative wandering that Dr. Eppel was talking about, people who have presence either have innately this capacity or they've trained the mind to do this. They can move beneath these thoughts or these thinkings or these moods, and they drop themselves using their mind into this open plane of possibility. And in terms of well-being now, what this model suggests is that you can teach people, and I would urge you to consider that mindfulness practices strengthen the mind's capacity to drop beneath habitual ways of thinking and feeling into this open plane of possibility, which is one way of describing for the mind what presence is. And then you could look at some of the correlates of this from brain firing, and we would suggest, from our point of view, that there's a process called integration, where you link differentiated components together, and that integration for us in the field I work in, interpersonal neurobiology, we propose is the fundamental mechanism of health. And so that the reason this practice seems to be so powerful for people is because, just as one example, and then I'll stop, this is an example of the integration of consciousness. What is integration? You have to take the fundamental elements of the phenomenon and differentiate them. In this case, the knowing from the known, and all, that's the hub from the rim, and then you teach people how to differentiate elements of the rim from each other. But then you link them with the systematic focus of attention. And in this process, you basically get harmony. The outcome, this is just the mathematics of complex systems, when complex systems allow differentiated parts to be linked together, harmony is what ensues, and when you block either differentiation or linkage, amazingly, what you get is chaos, rigidity, or both. So for us, for example, when we look at the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, we look at every symptom of every syndrome of that book as examples of chaos, rigidity, or both. And then when we look at some of the advances in technology, we see that there's actually in schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and autism, and then in the experientially related disorders of developmental trauma like abuse and neglect, all of those are examples of impaired neural integration. So in the brain, differentiated areas of the nervous system are not being linked. And the outcome, chaos and rigidity, is what happens. So one of the reasons I think mindfulness is so useful is because it's a profoundly integrative practice, and it creates presence. So thank you.
We've actually run out of time, so we'll stop right here. But just one thing, you know, when people say, what is healing? It's not, first of all, the etymology of the word healing, health, wholeness. Holy. Return of the memory of wholeness. Now, everyone who goes to medical school, the first lesson in physiology is homeostasis. Inflammation and homeostasis are the two words we start with, right, in our textbooks of physiology. Homeostasis is self-regulation. And when you go from this distracted state, you know, scattered state, to the state of mindfulness, you're coming from certainty to ambiguity to ultimately possibility, right? So the spectrum of human behavior is addiction at the extreme end, you can't do without it, attachment, preference, choice, and then choiceless awareness. So again, Krishnamurti used to say, choiceless awareness is the highest form of human intelligence, because basically it's self-regulation then. Everything happens by itself. It's homeostasis.
So right now, for me to have that with you, I remain open and present, and so whatever you send my way, I allow to be there.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're in choiceless awareness.
Yeah.
That's presence also.
Yeah.
And that's self-regulation, that's homeostasis.
And from a mind point of view, one way we can put everything we've talked about from the physicist to what we're talking about in well-being here is the mind actually moves probability curves of energy values. This is what I'm proposing to you. And when you can train the mind to do that, you train it literally to get out of fixed habits, move it down towards being comfortable with uncertainty. In fact, thriving with uncertainty is really what we do. And then infinite possibility becomes available to you because, as you know, number one, there's amazing amounts of firing patterns just to do the brain part. And the brain is always changing, so instead of being bored with life, you just say, try on a new firing pattern. And so we have all sorts of possibilities, but it comes from the mind's capacity to be trained to move toward this open plane, which is where presence arises.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Great. I think that is very valuable.